The runt of the litter. There's always one of them. You got dogs, cats, rats, bats, sloths, and especially video game series. And Dark Souls is no exception. Or Soulsborne. What do they call it? Elden Soulsborne? Ero? Whatever. The Souls-like games. Most people, if you ask them, they're going to say, oh, they're all pretty good. Except for that one. That one is Dark Souls 2, if you weren't aware. But what if I told you this runt was no runt at all? What if I told you that it was literally peak gaming? I may be lying if I told you that. But it's way better than most people give it credit for. And I can see why a lot of people don't like it. It feels very different from Dark Souls 1 and 3. And that's probably because a different team was responsible for making it. But different isn't necessarily a bad thing. And you know this, they teach you this in like elementary school. There's a lot of cool different things they did, like they added a stat called adaptability, which influences your invincibility frames during a dodge. And some people might be like, why do you need a statistic to make, a fundamental game mechanic like not getting hit change? And to that I say, maybe you don't need it. But why don't you just play the game and level it up until it's to the level you want it to be, and then there's no reason to complain about it? Because I think it actually caters to a wider audience. Because think about it, like you could keep your adaptability, i.e. your dodging invincibility frame level, super low if you wanted a more challenging run with more tight dodge windows, or you could level it up like a normal person, and the game will get a little bit easier as you go on from, that point of view. That's called looking on the bright side of things. And before you come at me with, well, why should I be forced to look for the bright side of something? Just don't, because I don't really have a defense for that. Another thing people complain about is there's so many bosses, but they all suck. Now that is a very, very good point you bring up. Why do the Dark Souls 2 bosses suck? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Do you have an answer yet? If your answer was they're too oversaturated and all feel very similar, or there's too many gank bosses, I don't care. I've heard that too many times. Think of something better. Yes, there may be an abnormal amount of gank boss fights, and maybe there are 2 rat boss fights that involve many small rats coming to try and kill you. However, there are 40 other boss fights that aren't a bunch of small rats trying to kill you. And if we look at those rats that are trying to kill us, some of them apply a toxic effect and the others provide some other effect that I can't remember. But it's different than toxic. And one of the rats is really big. So let's be honest, there's plenty of variety. I mean, there's even this giant demon lord that comes out of the lava, and it's really cool. Granted, he's like really easy to beat and has chooses to only slam his fist down on the ground. But it's still a really cool looking fight. And I'm all about the spectacle. And speaking of spectacle, this game looks really pretty. You know how gray and dull and dead Dark Souls 3 looks? This game's all pretty and wonderful and beautiful. Even like Dark Souls 1, nowhere near as colorful as this. And I'm gonna be real, it may sound childish, but the colors do help me. They make me interested. The brighter, the better. Now, from a strictly gameplay perspective, there is something I think 2 does better than 3 and 1. And I'm going to ignore the others because so far I've literally only been comparing it to the other Dark Souls games. But that is the freedom of direction and choice. Like, you get a bit of freedom in where you go in 1 and 3, but it's largely relatively linear. 1's a little less so than 3. But 2, you can choose to go to any of the 4 Lord Souls as soon as you want to. There are particular orders that make more sense than the other, but Majula is such a great hub that you can go in these 4 different directions and get 4 completely different playthroughs. I will say the game is a little lacking in hints when it comes to needing to know how to do certain things, like turning that little tower to actually get to one of the boss areas, and burning a windmill for some reason that gets rid of poison that helps you actually be able to do a boss fight. But these are still cool little things. Dark Souls is all about being unnecessarily cryptic and not explaining anything at all. So I think that could even be seen as a positive. So after hearing all of this, I know exactly what you're thinking. How could I be so dumb and not realize how great and amazing Dark Souls 2 is? It's okay, you're not alone. There's many other people out there with the same deficiency as you. But it's okay now because you've had your eyes opened. Now go and share the good word. Let everyone know that you're a Dark Souls 2er and everyone else should be too.